Hello YouTube and welcome. This is going to be the start of a series of videos to take you from almost zero experience to a fully aware, experienced person that can diagnose and understand what would be going wrong with the air conditioning system on a vehicle. This will also have open an insight into the other kind of air conditioning systems that you can find in the house. Basically, once you start realizing how this thing works, you'll understand that everything else is basically made out of the same component, but a different shape and different source of energy. So, in order to be able to diagnose any system, you need to understand how the system functions. You need to be aware of all involved components, their location, their role, and what links one to another, and why. So let's go ahead and explain how the thing works, and it's a very important step to understand how it functions. So later on in a practical situation, when you hook up the gauges to your vehicle, it will make a lot more sense on how the pressure, why is high or low, and it will make more sense to know like when that's true. There is online a lot of them charts. It shows like if you have a lot of pressure on the high side, a lot of pressure on the low side, what's the component that might be affected. It's true you got that, but if you have the common sense on how the thing function, you will really read the gauges and straight through without looking through that chart. You can understand, or know like suspect what could be wrong. So this system is a heat exchanger. What does that mean is like if you are taking the heat out of the inside of a building or cab or anything, that heat or energy must be gone somewhere. It must go outside. So for the hell of an example, like one time one dude told me like, yeah, they make air condition inside a house with one unit, and it's like he probably got that confused by a dehumidifier or something, or like them ice that you put them ice in them and then you turn on the fan and that works. But I was like, that doesn't make any sense at all. If it's just one inside unit and you think it's gonna cool your little room or car, it's impossible. So that goes with the principles of physics and nature, like all energy is like transformed and nothing is wasted. So if you take heat from the inside, it's gotta go out. So this whole system is like an exchanger. It absorbs the heat from inside and transform it outside. So let us start talking about the most important component in the system, which is the substance used, and it's commonly known as Freon. So the Freon name originally came from the R12, and the R12 was used in every vehicle made before 94. So that was the commonly thing they used at first, and its name is originally Freon. So any vehicle after 94, it relied on R134A, and that's the refrigerant that we commonly know and see in almost all vehicles. But actually starting from 2013, some manufacturers started trying the R1234YF, and known by 2021 as we just passed it. All vehicles are equipped with it now, and any vehicles come from factory will be coming out with R1234YF. So what's the difference? What do you need? Do you need to be worried about this? No. All you have to do just match your vehicle with what kind of Freon you're using, and that's simply it. So let's say you turn on the air condition, and what happened is the clutch will engage, and then this pulley will no longer turn by itself. It will also turn with the input shaft, and then we'll turn the compressor. So we're taking the Freon in form of this is not liquid, this is not liquid. It's still in form of gas, and we'll compress it. It actually comes as a gas out of the expansion valve. We'll get back to it later. And then once we know any substance, if you, any liquid or gas, if you compress it, pump it, like compress it at high pressure, so you're gonna have it turning to much heat around it, and it's gonna be really hot. So it's gonna, that's why it's gonna go to the heat exchanger, and it's gonna still stay in gas form because it's too hot. And once it goes through the condenser, that's the name of it, it's condenser. It's gonna kind of condense the gas, and it's gonna come out as liquid because it's gonna cool down. So once it's gonna really cool down, it's like you could just, it's Freon, it's way far from water, but it's like water. If it's too hot, it will turn to vapor. If it's cold, you cool down, it will condensate. So it's the same purpose, and through that is going to happen some heat exchange, and that's going to cool down and get rid of heat. So first component, and you really want to make sure that your fan is running, and this is going to be the part that's by the radiator. So, and then it's going to really go by receiver to the receiver dryer. What's pushing this fluid? It's like the pressure coming from the pump. So the pump is the heart of your system, the heart that pumps the fluid around and gases. So it's going to go to the receiver dryer. The receiver dryer have two functions. It's called here dryer, but they call it also receiver dryer. It has a filter in it, and one of its also important role is like keeping the moisture in it. So on the old style ones, you sometimes see like a see-through hole here. You can see the water. So basically, it's going to protect all the rest of the components from a contaminant through the filter and from water, because water is going to really stop some components from doing their functioning. Most common sense will tell you water will stay down due to thanks to gravity, and Freon will just go up because it's lighter. So after going through the dryer, so this dryer, I'll give you an example where you can find it. Sometimes it's just right underneath the fender, or like by the firewall. Some cars, you'll even have this right up front with right next to the condenser. So we're gonna go through the expansion valve. Now we'll talk about the old style expansion valves and the new style. So what does this thing do? So this liquid will go through a little tiny hole, and it's coming a little bit under in a flow. It's keep flowing, but right there, when it turns, go through that little hole, it will turn to a sort of gas. So this thing is still liquid here, but honestly, it is a sort of mix. Now, in a perfect theoretical world, this is going to be like liquid, like what we have here. So, and what happened is, once it goes through that little hole, they're going to have a really decrease in pressure. A really decrease in pressure. And like we talked about it, if you have a form of liquid and you open the valve underneath a compressor or a propane bottle, you'll see the nozzle is like freezing. It's due to it freezes because of the moisture in the air start like getting cold. So what we know of, that's gonna turn this Freon under lower pressure, a lot lower pressure. It will cool it down, and then it will go through the evaporator. So the evaporator, it's exactly, if you look at the name, it's evaporator. It was going to turn this to vapor. So the liquid will transform to vapor. When liquid transforms to vapor in nature of any substance, we will also see an absorption of heat of energy. So that absorption of heat will make the air around it so cold. So that's how you obtain this kind of cold um, feel of air. After that, it's gonna go back by the expansion valve. The expansion valve can change the way they look and the way they function from one system to another. So, like the one we have here, it kind of recycle the Freon back through it for a reason of regulation. So it kind of have moving parts inside, and is going to really restrict or expand more for the Freon depending on the temperature of the coming Freon that's coming out of the evaporator. There is also the kind of other expansion valve with a sensing bulb that goes to right in front of the evaporator, and it actually contains a separate kind of Freon inside of it that really goes and controls a diaphragm on top. And the purpose of this is to make sure that the Freon in our system always stays in that phase at the exit of the evaporator is in a boiling condition. It's like turning back to gas, and it actually links to a diaphragm and a spring inside the expansion valve to control the restriction, or like they call the superheat regulation. On the other side, we can replace the expansion valve by an orifice tube, and it's actually, unlike the expansion valve, it's enabled to regulate the flow rate and superheating, but it does look like it's easier to replace and very cost effective. The only thing is, like, the orifice tube is always associated with an accumulator at the evaporator outlet. So we always find an accumulator outside after the evaporator in case we have an orifice tube. So that's kind of confusing sometimes. You see from a different car to another. So that's to also remember, and you should know if your vehicle have an orifice tube or just a regular expansion valve. So the Freon, after leaving the expansion valve, it will come back to the compressor and will finish the cycle here, and then it will keep cycling around the same way we described. Right, we're in the Harbor Freight. You have these two. These two both components is basically what you need for your tackling any air condition. And of course, you got the R134A. It's the most common thing you see nowadays. Until probably another 5 or 6 years from now, you'll see more and more of the other one. These two were not expensive. They were like only like $158 for both. So it was almost $60 for the gauges and a $90 for the pump. You could have bought a smaller pump, but that's a good heavy duty one, and they're known to work pretty good. So in the second video, we'll start taking examples on how to check the gauges. Just stay tuned and subscribe, please, and we'll see you then.